this is an interesting one they got from AP. Biden says, revitalized Palestinian Authority should eventually govern Gaza and the West Bank. So basically, he's giving it to the West Bank, he would like to have the the Palestinian Authority take over Gaza.
Who wants what?
Biden would like to have the Palestinian Authority take over Gaza, rather replacing the Hamas leadership of Gaza. Okay, let me give one more, so we'll include Susie. Here, you can pass one more down.
Susie already has one.
So, and then you have an answer. If you read the article, there's an answer to that by Netanyahu. The Palestinian Authority is, quote, not ready yet. Whatever that means. Of course, in case you don't know, all the humanitarian money that was being sent through Israel to the Palestinians in Gaza, which the Israeli government was supposed to, send it on to the people in Gaza, but through the Palestinian Authority. Instead of giving it to the Palestinian Authority, he gave it directly to Hamas. That's the thing. Remember when Jeff, when he talked about it and said that this is why he thinks there's no way he will be reelected. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. We also didn't think Trump would ever get reelected. We're not sure about that right now. And also along the same lines, Biden wants global security regime in Gaza, then the PA, and interestingly, one thing that he added to that, and that's interesting, he suggests a ban. Obviously he can't do it, Congress needs to do it, a ban on violent settlers. In other words, violent settlers could not get visas to visit the United States. A lot of them have American families, so that's an interesting suggestion. Anyway, pass these down. And let's start. I'm not going to wait till for any more people to come. So far we discussed the beginning of modern Zionism in Russia, or I shouldn't say in Russia, I should say in the Russian Empire, which included many current countries. In 1881, that's the beginning of Zionism. Following the government-sponsored basically reign of terror on the Jewish population, the government-sponsored ongoing pogroms that did not end until just before World War I. So Herzl's political Zionist movement was founded 16 years later, in 1897, when he convened the first Zionist Congress in Basel, in the city of Basel in Switzerland. Herzl actually opposed the system that the Russian Zionists, so the Chibat Zion and Bilu movement were doing. In other words, immediately just going and founding settlements, which he referred to as colonies. So here's what he wrote in der Judenstadt, his famous book. Important experiments in colonization have been made, although on the mistaken principle of a gradual infiltration of Jews. An infiltration is bound to end badly. It continues until, and watch this, that's actually prophetic, until the inevitable moment when the native population feels itself threatened and forces the government to stop a further influx of Jews. Which happened, he thought it would happen under an Ottoman Empire, government. It happened under a British government. Immigration is consequently futile unless we have sovereign right to continue immigration. So whoever is the governing power in Palestine, if they give us the right to settle, that would work. So that he wanted the politics ahead of the immigration. Okay, that's what's referred, his Zionism is referred to as political Zionism. And Zionist law and the way it's taught in Israel, it's between practical Zionism and political Zionism. And both were very important. Without either one, we wouldn't have had even the Yishuv that was formed between 1881 and 1948. So the difference on how to bring Zionist idea to fruition, the differences would continue until 1948, until the formation of the State of Israel. Hertzl's idea spread very rapidly, much more so than the original idea, even though the original idea was in the Russian Empire, where the vast majority of the Jews in the world, as they keep telling you, were in Eastern Europe, not in the West. But the West, ideas from the West spread much more. So
that he meant we needed to own that land.
well, we needed to have the permission of the government. The government has to approve of our immigration.
Oh, but we still don't.
Whatever was the government.
Yeah,
So in his time it was the Ottoman government.
yeah.
Again, there was no talk of a Palestinian nation. There was also no talk, Palestine was part of Greater Syria under Ottoman rule. But, so the residents were actually residents of Syria officially. But even so, they didn't even refer to them as Syrians. They referred to them generally as Arabs. And that's how they saw themselves at that point. The division comes after the entire Arab world becomes, to varying degree, independent. And then each nation secure its own nationhood, and that included the Palestinians. So, in any way, despite this difference in tactics, supporters of the original Zionist movements in the Russian Empire were immediately drawn to and allied with Hertzl. Pinsker's Chibat Zion and the Bilu movement, both of which in the Russian Empire were sending immigrants, disbanded and in order to join the Zionist Congress as part of what would become the Zionist Zionist organization, the World Zionist Organization. Anyway, although we know that Hertzl did not invent Zionism, he was very much he was the person responsible to its growth and development and success. And for the eventual acceptance of political Zionism by various Jewish communities, all of which at this point were opposed to it. We'll get a little bit more into that. And by the world at large. He managed to surmount the opposition of all the different varieties of Jewish leadership. So, which Jewish, the Zionists in Russia were for the most part what we refer to as maskilim. So, educated,
intellectual,
secular Jews. And when I say secular, I don't mean like us secular, but to varying degrees secular. Why am I emphasizing this? Because religious Judaism was extremely opposed to that Zionist idea from the get-go. And when I say religious Judaism, all shades of it. So there were no, what we call conservative Judaism today was actually part of the Reform movement at this point. Okay? And the Reform movement was extremely opposed to Zionism. Well, let me get a little more into it. Let me finish with the point I started here. Pre-Hertzl Zionism was basically what we can call a utopian movement. Okay? So it didn't have the making of a mass movement.
What year is this, NATAN?
I'm sorry?
What years?
Well, we're not in a specific year. The 1897 is when he convened the Congress.
Okay.
Okay? So, despite the immediate success of the first Zionist Congress, and we'll get more into that, Hertzl's ideas were initially, so here's to the previous point that I didn't go deeply into, harshly vilified by all the leaders of establishment Judaism, and I mean all the leadership, religious and secular lay leadership. I don't mean secular, I mean lay leadership. Okay. Harshly vilified by them. For religious orthodoxy, I think you all understand why religious orthodoxy would be against it. The exile of the Jews, why are Jews in exile? And there is no diaspora, we are all in exile. Until we are back in the land of Israel, we are in exile. And the exile has been decreed by God. Read the Bible and the Talmud. So, it serves as a punishment, but not only a punishment, a purification. We are here as a part of a purification process. And until God in His great wisdom will deem the Jews worthy, and then He will send the Messiah to deliver them.
So our
To
suffering,
take them back.
our
Yes.
suffering makes things better
Well,
eventually.
process of purification.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
And at the same time, what about more secular Jewish leadership? Well, if secular Jewish leaders saw Hertzl's idea as very dangerous, Because what were they trying to do? What they were about was the acceptance of the Jews and their integration in the various countries of the diaspora, of the Jewish diaspora. And so they were sure that the Zionist idea would definitely does not go along with that. Okay, and we already talked at length about what would be the Zionist answer to that. So, to Hertzl's credit, he was not deterred by the almost unanimous Jewish leadership criticism. In 1896, a very important meeting took place. Well, let's go a little bit back. There is a name I put on the board, William Hechler, okay? Reverend William Hechler, actually. He was an Anglican minister who was the chaplain of the British Embassy in Berlin. Now remember, Herzl's world was consisted mostly of two European empires, two Germanic empires, okay? Austria-Hungary and the new German Empire.
Can you stop a minute and let's
The map?
The map is-
Is
So
it
we can see
possible to put the
maybe.
map?
Oh yeah, I didn't lower the map. We don't need the map today, really.
Nice to be told.
Yay.
So, I didn't notice that it was
You don't have
covered.
eyes in the back of your head, that's why.
Yeah?
So, Hechler is very important. Is important in Jewish history is from the get-go, he was very active, a very active anti-Semitism. He was an anti-Semite. He was basically very active against anti-Semitism in Europe. He also, by the way, fought for the right of Jews to immigrate to Great Britain. Because since the Middle Ages, Jews were officially, there were already many Jews in Britain, but it was officially, by law, they weren't allowed, you know. And the majority of the Jews in Britain at this point were that, you know, like the Israeli, you know, whose parents were Jewish. The majority were Sephardic immigrants, mostly from the Netherlands, so from Western Europe. In any case, in 1890, he heard about Herzl's idea, and he visited him in 1896. Hechler read Der Judenstaat, that's what influenced him, and became very interested in Zionism. He became, I don't want to make comparison to current day Christian Zionists, but because that's a very different phenomenon. But he became the first non-Jewish Zionist.
So, Natan, a
Yes.
Christian Zionist would be a Christian who wants to live in Israel?
No.
No?
No.
What is a Christian Zionist?
People that call themselves Christian Zionists are basically American Christian fundamentalists who basically support the right wing of Israel.
Okay, but they don't want to go there.
No. They want to support.
Okay.
But then is
Neither did Hechler want to go there.
Is it different from Jews for Christ? Is it different movement?
Oh no,
That's
that's
very different.
totally not connected. Yeah.
Could you just repeat what his position was? I was looking at the map during it. He was what? Heckler was the archbishop? What was his?
He wasn't a bishop. He was a minister, an Anglican minister, but he was the chaplain of the British embassy in Berlin at the time that he met with Hertzl. Okay, so here Hertzl in his diary wrote at length about his meeting with Hechler, but here's part of what he wrote there. We came to the heart of the business. I told him that I must put myself into direct, he wanted help from Hechler, because this is his help. He wants political Zionism, he needs to meet with world leaders. And Hechler is close to several world leaders, both German and British, and others, as you'll see. So, we came to the heart of the business. I said to him that I must put myself into direct and publicly known relations with a responsible ruler. That is, with a minister of state or a prince, as an example. Remember, this is 19th century Europe. The Jews will then believe in me and accept my ideas. The most suitable personage would be the German Kaiser. Note that I put Kaiser Bill's name on the board, his real name. He was the German Kaiser of World War I, and to the Americans he was known as Kaiser Bill at that time. Willie. Anyway, Hechler arranged a meeting for Hertzl with Frederick I, the Grand Duke of Baden. Baden is one of the German states. Okay? So, and by the way, he was the uncle of the German Emperor, of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Through the effort of both Hechler and the Grand Duke after this, Hertzl was granted an extended audience with the Kaiser in 1898. The meeting was immediately taken by the media, and it significantly advanced the legitimacy of his ideas. After all, the German Kaiser, so one of the world leaders of the time, had been willing to listen to those ideas. There must be something to it. In May 1896, the first English edition of Der Judenstaat was published in Britain. So on June 15, 1896, Hertzl traveled to Istanbul, and he met with a Polish count in Turkey, in Istanbul, Count Philip Nevlensky. Nevlensky had political contacts he was a Polish politician, but he had contacts in the Ottoman court. So Hertzl failed, despite that, in attempt to meet with the Sultan, Abdul Hamid II, but he did meet with the next most important Turkish official, the Grand Vizier. The Prime Minister, we would say. Okay? And who, by the way, received Hertzl in his capacity as a head minister, and in the capacity that Hertzl came to him was a journalist, which he was, for the Neue Freie Presse, an established, known Viennese newspaper. So, he presented a proposal. He made a proposal proposal to the Grand Vizier. The Jews would pay the entire Turkish foreign debt and also help to regulate Turkish finances, which, as we know, this was at the time the sick man of Europe. So he offered Jewish help, financial help,
That was their specialty.
if they would be allowed to return to Palestine. Okay. By the way, underline, under Ottoman rule. By the way, 5 years later, in 1901, Hertzl did manage to meet with the Sultan himself, and the Sultan basically rejected his offer. But so, back to after this meeting with the Grand Vizier, Hertzl's success in meeting with both the German Kaiser and the Grand Vizier did do wonders for his credibility. In July 1896, a Jewish officer in the British Army, Colonel Albert Goldsmith, ending with a D, I didn't put that name down, but helped Hertzl in organizing a rally, a Zionist rally in East End in London. I don't know if you're familiar. East End was the
Jewish.
what was the street on the east side of Detroit?
Goethe?
No,
Goethe?
In Detroit.
the
In
Jewish
Detroit,
street
yeah.
that you wrote about, that you.
Oh, Hastings?
Hastings. That was the
Black
Hastings
Bottom.
street of
Hastings.
London. Basically, it was where a lot of Yiddish-speaking, not all the Yiddish-speaking, most of the Yiddish-speaking Jews, not the Sephardic Jews, lived in East
Black
End.
Bottom.
The Sephardic Jews were mostly accepted in Britain, much more than
Oh, yeah.
Ashkenazi Jews. And many of them, by the way, were refugees from the Russian pogroms. That's why they ended up in Britain. In July 12, 1896, Hertzl addressed a mass rally of thousands in London, in East End. He was received with acclaim, so he did not have a hostile audience in any way, and he was now recognized, even in Britain, as the world leader of the Zionist movement. In 1897 in Vienna, at his own personal expense, he started a Zionist journal, Die Welt, the world, and through that he began to plan the first Zionist Congress, which was to take place which ended up taking place, I should say, in the famous concert hall of Basel. It's called the Stadtcasino, but it's not a casino that you would think of. That was the name of the concert hall. Anyway, so it took place it began on August 29, well, it took place from August 29 to September 1st of 1897. Hertzl's purpose in convening the Congress was to make the Zionist Congresses a symbolic parliament, a Jewish parliament, a parliament of the organized communities of Zionist communities throughout the world's Jewish diaspora. And in other words, all those who agreed with his ideas. But the Jewish leadership of the majority of the world's organized Jewish, the heads, the leaders of the organized communities, organized world Jewish communities, still did not continue to oppose Zionism and would continue to oppose Zionism until the 1940s, when they started hearing about the Holocaust. And even after that, many of them continued to oppose it. Certainly the bulk of both the Orthodox communities and the Reform community, both Orthodox and Reform officials. Now, there were exceptions to that. Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver was a noted Zionist, Reform rabbi in Cleveland. He became one of the leaders of American Zionism, but he was very much the exception in the Reform movement. The Reform movement had a lay organization called the World Council for Judaism, the American Council for Judaism, which specified the Jewish people are part of a worldwide religion. They are not a nationality, and treating them as such is harmful to the Jewish people worldwide. Yeah.
To this day, Orthodox Jews are not pro-Israel because of the Messiah?
Not true.
Hasn't come?
Not true. Not true. In these days, we came to a point where, and I'm saying some Orthodox Jews, Orthodox Jews eventually by the
the Chabad Jews.
Let me finish. Chabad is not Zionist. They support Israel, but they're not Zionists. They're anti-Zionist officially.
That's what I'm talking about.
But, no, you said anti-Israel. That's not the
No,
same
not
thing.
anti-
Well,
anti-
there are many Orthodox organizations to date that are very much anti-Israel. Anti the existence of Israel and anti-Zionism.
Did you say Chabad was anti-Zionist or Zionist?
But pro-Israel.
Pro-Israel.
As in, they take Israel as a fact. Once it's an existing fact, and especially now that the majority of the world's Jews live in Israel, So, I'm not the majority, but Israel is the biggest Jewish community, the largest Jewish community in the world.
So how can you say they're anti-Zionist?
So,
because of
they are against
Messiah.
the Zionist idea. Let me finish the answer to him. Okay, basically, in the 1930s, with the growth of anti-Semitism in Europe, my father became a Zionist in the 1920s, and he was Orthodox, and he joined a what became a religious Zionist organization. Now, it was a socialist Orthodox Zionist.
But the Messiah hasn't come.
Let me finish. I'm answering. Let me finish, Tom. I'm sorry. The Orthodox community in the world, first of all, it's divided between what we call ultra-Orthodox, and so in the ultra-Orthodox never recognized Israel, period.
Is that the Chabad people?
Chabad is part of it, but it's not only the Chabad and it's not only the Hasidic movement, it's also the anti-Hasidic movement, what we call the
Misnagdim.
Litvaks,
Misnagdim.
mistakenly, by the way.
Called Misnagdim.
Oh, well, in Ashkenazi Hebrew, it's called Misnagdim, yeah.
It's
It's
very
not.
interesting, because up in times, it had
It means
different
against.
ideas.
Negative
Within
is
the
against.
1950s, I remember, we lived on a small block with maybe 10 houses, and two families were Jewish. And, you know, but we weren't, we were atheists, really.
Right.
And never joined any place. And then the other was a regular conservative. But all of a sudden, it was in the 50s, another Jewish family moved in, and my mother was horrified. They were Zionists, you know, and I think it was because it meant communist at the time. And she was just, you know, Zionists on our block.
At a time in the Detroit community, up until the Second World War, the Reform movement, which was the largest movement
Yeah.
in the area,
Was the largest movement countrywide.
right, was largely anti-Zionist. Temple Bethel, which was the oldest congregation in Detroit,
Yeah.
was very anti-Zionist. The rabbi, I don't remember if it's Hertzl or who it was an ardent anti-Zionist, and the congregation split. And those, because there were a lot of pro-Zionists, and they formed Temple Israel. That's where-
Yeah, I heard about that.
Wow.
I knew about that.
It was huge in those days.
Yeah,
What was the reason, do you know, Frank, why they were anti-Zionist?
because they viewed
For the
themselves as
same
Americans.
reasons, yeah.
Because of
Exactly what NATAN said. Judaism was simply a religion, it was not an ethnicity. They were Americans first who happened to be Jewish.
Yeah.
And so they viewed
In
Zionism.
other words-
Jewish state doesn't
In other words,
It's a dangerous
Tom,
idea.
the Zionist idea is like you're going to create a Protestant country or a Catholic, a country whose basis is Catholicism. That's how they start.
What about the Messiah thing? That doesn't matter?
Well, not to the
Not to the
Reform.
Yeah, not to the Reform.
What about the Chabad? That matters,
Of
right?
course.
Oh,
Not just Chabad, the entirety of all. Okay, and to end what I was answering your previous
Before,
question,
yeah.
Today, people like me, you notice I'm most certainly not anti-Zionist. I said that Zionism was a movement that had to come under the circumstances of the time, you know, or something like it. There were other movements that I'll talk about later, like the Bund.
Chabad.
But today, no, I'm not talking about Chabad, but, you know, to date, the people that call themselves Zionist Orthodox are, first of all, modern Zionists, as opposed to, but the word modern is misleading, because a lot of them became ultra-Orthodox, and they are calling themselves, those are the people that are emphasizing their Zionism today in Israel. And those are the settlers movement, basically. The people who settle right now, mostly in the West Bank, to a smaller extent in the Golan Heights. Nobody settles in the Gaza Strip anymore.
Not
not
question.
now.
I don't know if I'm
He
hearing.
didn't finish his thought here yet.
No, I did.
It's a vocabulary word. I just don't know if I'm hearing it correctly. Chabad with a C?
CH, yeah.
Chabad.
Chabad, Lubavitch.
Lubavitch. Lubavitch.
Yabavitch?
Lubavitch. You're not familiar?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So that's Chabad. Their official name is not Lubavitch. Their official name is Chabad, which is an acronym.
Abba.
Chabad.
Abba. Chabad.
Yes.
Chabad. Okay.
Yeah, CHABAD.
I didn't know what I was hearing.
Yeah.
So the thought is that
The word is an acronym for three words: wisdom, learning, and knowledge.
Neat.
It's on their buildings. It's on their synagogues,
Yeah.
you'll see it written.
All right, so, so, by the way, it's interesting because the opposition to Zionism accomplished an impossible thing.
Unite.
Reform rabbis and Orthodox rabbis met. For the first time, they were willing to talk to each other in their opposition to Zionism. They knew that they needed each other to oppose Zionism.
What year was that?
Yeah,
What year was that?
I'm sorry?
What year?
That was throughout, from the 1890s
Started that
to 1948 again. And, well, yeah, from the 1890s to 1948, basically.
Nathan,
So, yeah.
still, the question was Chabad and the Messiah. That's another thing right?
Yeah, I don't know why you
Until the
keep.
Messiah
Chabad is a small part of the larger Hasidic movement.
In my
Let me
neighborhood,
finish.
I have millions of Chabad people.
Yeah, because they're the ones that push everywhere. They're the ones that they're the most the most missionary-like Jews, you know.
So I want to
Yeah.
know, that's the reason why they're,
I don't want to get into
for
Chabad.
Messiah.
I'm just going to say the Chabad in that respect is
That's
one
here.
small part of the entire Hasidic movement. And the Hasidic movement is one part of the larger ultra-Orthodox.
Yeah,
And they
Movement.
still insist on Messiah, right? Coming to.
all of them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the question.
Now, some of them accepted the
Really only
state as an existing fact. Some of them, like Chabad, Satmar, another Hasidic group, absolutely not. No Jewish state until the Messiah comes.
Aha.
So, okay, and Chabad, so that was the original idea, but now the Jewish state is a fact,
Aha.
whether you like it or not. So Chabad accepted that there is a fact.
Oh, they accepted
He
it.
wants to know what
That
Chabad is.
Israel is a fact, not Zionism, not the Zionist idea.
Aha.
Okay. Okay, so in any case, originally, the Zionist Congress, we started talking about the Zionist Congress, was planned to take place in Munich. But but remember, Munich, very important city in the German Empire of the time,
The FUCHS.
and and the reform movement was centered in Germany at the time, so they made sure that they wouldn't be allowed to convene in Munich, and that's why he chose Basel. A pamphlet, by the way, an opposition pamphlet, was printed and set throughout the Jewish world, which read, Zionism could not hope to resolve the Jewish problem, but it would only serve to harm Jews everywhere. That was the heading of the pamphlet. It was signed by the major Orthodox and Reform rabbis. That's something that could never have happened before, and couldn't happen presently. The Congress opened festively. The delegates, including even the Russian Jewish socialists, arrived dressed formally, in tails and white ties. And Hertzl acted as the chairman of the Congress. It was attended by some 200 participants from 17 countries. 69 of the 200 were delegates, official delegates. several of the delegates, and that was also something, 17, I'm sorry, of the delegates were women, which was kind of unheard of in 19th century Europe.
Heavens.
So all the rest were just invitees, as opposed to delegates. And one of the invitees was William Hertzl, who was attended, but made a point of abstaining from any votes, since he believed that, that's a Jewish matter that he shouldn't be voting on. The principal items on the Congress agenda were presented, or the presentation of Hertzl's plans, beginning with establishment of the World Zionist Organization, still exists, although officially, I'll get a little bit into that, officially it was supposed to only exist, well, I'll get back to that in a few sentences.
Basel is in where, Switzerland?
Yeah.
Basel, yeah.
Yeah, the three corners.
Yes, yes. So, Herzl's declaration of the goals of Zionism became known as the Basel Program. Hertzl was elected as the president of the World Zionist Organization, a position that he held until his death, which was much later, unfortunately. He died fairly young. He died in his 50s.
Oh.
Max Nordau, I put that name on the board, was a Zionist leader who was the next, who was under Hertzl and would become the next chair. He was he was a Zionist leader, but he was also a physician and a well-known author and social critic. Writing mostly, by the way, all of them wrote in the civilized European language, which was to them German. Hertzl thought that the language of if there will be a Jewish state, its language would be German.
Ah.
Yes.
How
Hebrew was
ironic,
pretty
how
much
ironic
it.
that was.
Don't forget that at the time Hebrew was considered a dead language, although it was still
Only the
taught.
scholars, yeah.
People spoke Hebrew for religious purposes or in religious studies. But they could speak Hebrew, but it wasn't. Herzl's opposition to Hebrew consisted of Hebrew language. You can't buy a box of matches in Hebrew.
It was like Latin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Dead language.
Yeah.
Which was also
Yeah.
spoken, the intelligentsia,
Right.
but it was a dead language nonetheless.
Until only
So- So Nordau was a co-founder of the Zionist organization with Hertzl, and later, as I said, served as president of a few of the following congresses.
NATAN?
Let me just finish this point. An action committee was elected to run the affairs of the movement between congresses. So it would be, remember, if this is a parliament, it has to be ongoing. So there's an action, a continuing action committee, and the congresses were scheduled to take place every 3 years. Now here's what I wanted to explain to you. Until the goal had been met. What's the goal?
Creation.
All Jews to Israel.
Well, no, I don't think even Herzl thought that all Jews would be in Israel. But creating, not even a state, creating a Jewish center
Consciousness.
A
In-
homeland.
Palestine, where
Kind of
Jews
like
can refer to themselves as the people of whatever you'd call that center.
So kind of
Yeah.
like the Roman Catholic Church in Rome has the Vatican. You
Right,
have a
Oh, yeah.
center.
right,
Yeah.
It's
For
part
the
of it.
Pope.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Isn't it?
But,
similar?
well, he thought of it, he thought of it in much more secular terms, obviously. It was a very secular movement initially.
Yeah. The Vatican
To a
itself.
large degree, because remember, the majority of the people still ended up coming from the Russian Empire and to a lesser extent from Romania. But, to them,
It's complicated.
what was the question? Hold
I didn't
on.
have
No, tell me anyway.
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay, so what was okay. So,
What was the answer?
yeah, go ahead.
So I want to know, in 1888, Eliezer ben Yehuda came to Israel, my land, and to create, and
Addiction.
he wanted to create a modern day
Language.
language.
Yeah.
He created a dictionary
Yeah,
of modern Hebrew.
yeah. So was there any connection for him with any of these groups?
Well, he was a Zionist, no question about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
But all that comes later. Remember, Hebrew, even when he began it, his son was raised in Hebrew.
he couldn't say anything except.
Yeah.
Yes,
he had no
right.
friends.
Today, he would have been arrested for it. He
Yeah.
couldn't speak the language that was spoken outside his house.
Oh, my
That's right.
God. How cruel.
Any of the languages, not Yiddish, certainly not Arabic, and not Polish,
Yeah,
which is where his where Ben Yehuda came from.
yeah.
Audrey had a question.
Well, I was just
So
wondering-
until the goals, just one second, until the goals have been met, so that means that once the center exists, the Zionist movement is finished. Is over. So people that I refer to myself as a post-Zionist. Most Israelis, certainly people on the left, but not only on the left, think of themselves as post-Zionism. If Zionism wanted to create a Jewish center, well, we have a Jewish state now. It's created. The purpose is done with. So now we have to, Jews that wanted to come had their chance. Jews that would want to come still have their chance. But a Zionist movement has to deal not with immigrating Jews have to deal with a government of a state rather than
New country.
an idea, a movement. Yeah.
No.
Tom.
Audrey-
No.
I'm sorry, Audrey.
Yes,
So
demand.
this center, though, was a place where Jews would be welcome. So there had to be some assurance that people, because the purpose of this, main purpose was to get Jews who were being persecuted in
Right.
various places
Give them
and had no
Absolutely.
other place to go.
Sanctuary.
So somehow this had to be open to them, so that if there was a different government had to be willing on a continuous basis to take in Jews.
He thought only in terms of the Ottoman government. Nobody thought there would be a world war
Sit down.
until it
Well, do you
happened.
think the Ottoman
Let me finish,
government?
Audrey, let me finish. Nobody thought there'd be a world war, and nobody believed that all the Jews would suddenly pack up and go to Palestine. What they wanted was persecuted Jews would have a Jewish place to go to. So yeah, there would be Jewish immigration to Palestine, but they would never constitute the majority. Hertzl wrote, I told you about that if Jews attempted to do that, the local population would be hostile. Remember what I told you, even Jabotinsky, the real leader of the right-wing Zionism, who was for creating a Jewish state. But even Jabotinsky believed, that in the Jewish state, that it would be in some way a binational state. Jabotinsky said that by then it was definitely going toward a Jewish state. This was after World War I. But what he said was that in the Jewish state, there will be two leaders, a Jewish leader and an Arab leader. One would be president and one would be prime minister.
Wow.
Yes.
But wait a minute, I just wanted to,
Wait,
finish
I'll get
up.
back to you, Audrey. Tom, go ahead.
Audrey?
Yeah.
Just real quick, Hertzl then really was not a very forward-thinking person. He thought the Ottoman Empire would last forever. Nothing lasts forever.
Nothing less. He didn't think of. Nobody thinks in terms of
But
forever.
he wasn't
In
planning
the-
for the future changes.
for the present world situation, this is going. We can't. None of us know what about the changes. Who would have thought about Trump as the president of the United States before 2016? And so, there's an army saying, a military saying, any battle plan lasts until you meet the enemy.
Oh.
And that's the same thing. Yeah, he thought in terms of the world as he knew it.
Yeah.
And that included, three major powers, which is major European powers, which is Austria-Hungary,
Russia.
Germany, and not Russia so much. Russia was a primitive, the Russian Empire was a primitive empire, and post-revolution it wasn't much better. But,
Switzerland?
yeah. Oh, I thought you were asking me. But anyways, he thought of the world as he knew it. Yeah, Tom.
Just two things. He's my hero, Theodore
Okay.
Hertzl. Is there a statue in Israel?
Oh, all
Or
kinds of them.
Streets and
Yeah.
stuff? Okay, number two.
The first military cemetery in Israel is in Jerusalem on Mount Hertzl.
Uh,
yeah.
Answer? Okay.
Number two, Sherwin Wine, Zionist or not?
Absolutely, he was a
He
Zionist.
was a
Yeah.
Zionist.
He gave talks about
He
it.
took us to Israel.
Okay?
And
Yeah.
Felix,
From the get-go, he was a
Israel with
Zionist.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but not for a Jewish state,
Should've
but
seen
for
him
the
dancing.
state
Oh, I
of
wish I had
Israel.
Oh my
For-
God.
for- What do you mean by Jewish state?
Yeah.
You think of Jews as
I
a
get that
religion.
confused.
Nobody outside the United States, remember, Jews being citizens of any European countries was something new. And it only started with the French Revolution. So France was the first country that gave Jews citizenship, full citizenship. All right, let me continue. I'm over time and I want to finish it.
No more questions till the end.
Well, let
That's
me
a
just
good
finish
idea.
with
Hold
the
your question.
Congress.
Yeah,
I want
please.
to go a little farther, but I won't. In August 30, so we're still in 1897. On August 30th, the middle day of the Congress was 29/30 and September 1st. So on August 30th, on the second day of deliberation, a declaration was submitted by Max Nordau, which stated as follows. Zionism seeks to establish a home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Now, a home does not mean a state. Remember that. Okay. Secured under public law. In other words, under the law of the land. The law of the land is still Ottoman law. That statement gave expression to Herzl's political Zionist vision, as opposed to the settlement-oriented activities of the more loosely organized Russian organization, Chibat Zion and Bil. the Basel program set out the goals of the Zionist movement. Let me give you this. I'm only, you don't need to keep it, but just sending on enough so everybody can see it. But let me keep,
Can I ask a
well,
question?
that's fine, that's fine. Let me just finish with this. 'Cause
Okay.
I'll lose my train of thought. So, this is how it consisted basically, the Basel program set out the goals of the immediate goals of the Zionist movement. Now, you probably cannot read it in the German because it came out very blurry in the copy. But this is how they were adopted. So I'm going to read it to you in English. Zionism aims at the establishment for the Jewish people a publicly and legally assured home in Palestine. So they don't have to be a majority, but they have to be assured that they have a home in Palestine. For the attainment of this purpose, the Congress considered the following means serviceable, and there are only 4 of them. You can see it also on the picture that I gave you. Number 1, oh, you have the one I gave before, yeah. Same thing, yeah. It's in German though. The promotion of the settlement of Jewish agriculturalists, artisans, and tradesmen in Palestine. The federation of all Jews into local or general groups according to the laws of the various countries. Number 3, the strengthening of the Jewish feeling and consciousness worldwide. And number 4, the preparatory steps for the attainment of those governmental grants that are necessary for the achievement of the Zionist purpose. Yeah. So that's the entirety of the Basel program.
Owned by Turkey, the grant, the land is
Well,
owned by Turkey.
The government remember, the world is not ruled by city-states, Hertzl's Europe. It's ruled by empire. So Palestine would be a province in the Ottoman Empire as it continues.
Yeah.
But within the, just as Judah or Judea was part of the Roman Empire, but everybody knew it was the home of the Jewish people.
Would
Okay?
you say,
And the Jews, by the way, were not a majority by then either
No.
in Palestine.
Palestinian,
No, I'm talking about in ancient time under late Roman and Byzantine.
Canaanites, yeah.
Okay,
can I ask,
so yeah,
Hertzl was a reporter in
right.
Hungary, and he was at the trial.
He was a reporter from Austria, although
Oh,
Hungary was part of it because he lived he was born in Budapest, but he lived in Vienna.
Okay,
Nice city.
but he was at the trial of,
Dreyfus.
The
Dreyfus
Dreyfus
trial.
trial. He covered it as a journalist.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was led to believe that, from reading, that was the thing that interested him, then to go into his Judaic background and got him on the path.
That might
So
have
I
triggered it.
figured that it meant that establishing a place was a place that would govern, so that things like that would never happen again. So
Right,
it wasn't only something real that you could touch, but it would be a place that made them part of a group that they could, go to
Right,
get their rights
right.
and proper, okay.
Right.
Ton, I have a very
Yeah.
quick question. What was, as I understand it, Jewish immigration to the area started in the late 19th century? What was the Ottoman Empire's position?
The Ottoman Empire had always been, to varying degrees, friendly to Jews. But the late Ottoman Empire, on the eve of, before, well, you know, this is the Ottoman Empire that had the Armenian genocide,
right,
you know.
right.
It began to be very frightening for Jews because of basically the way it was. Again, remember the title of the Ottoman Empire, the way it was thought of in Europe is the sick man of Europe.
Wow.
Sick man?
The Ottoman Empire was referred to
It was fake.
in Europe proper as the sick man of Europe.
To Frank's question, they have a Congress without the approval of the Ottoman Empire. I think that's where you're going.
Well, what I'm saying is the Ottoman Empire was unlike the Balfour Declaration.
Right.
The Ottoman Empire never officially
Well,
sanctioned.
Sanctioned.
As I said,
the Jewish state.
Hertzl made them an offer,
Yeah,
they rejected it.
right,
Then, you know, came other, and meanwhile they continued the efforts.
right.
Then came World War I, then the end of the Ottoman Empire,
Right.
and after that they had to deal with the new empire, which is German, and which is Britain.
British.
Right, okay.
Good point.
So,
He's not
just
finished. He's not
complete,
finished.
hold on, I'm not
Wait,
done.
he's not finished.
So, just the achievement, I'm almost finished. 6 achievements of the first Zionist Congress. Number 1, the formulation of the Zionist platform, you know, which is the Basel program. That's the platform, okay? Number 2, the founding of the Zionist organization. Number 3, the adoption, this is another one that I didn't mention before, adopting Hatikva by Imbel, by the poet Imbel, as the Jewish national anthem,
No kidding.
which became the national anthem of Israel,
Huh?
okay?
Who would have known?
And although they changed some of the
The
words.
German. Didn't they take it from the German, the Moldau?
The melody.
Czech, not German.
Or Czech?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's being accused, but it's similar. I think it's coincidental, but
Oh, I don't think so.
I wouldn't bet on it
Beautiful.
either
It's a
way.
beautiful
You're right.
melody. No, they liked it.
Well, I didn't notice it being. I noticed there's a similarity in the.
Melody.
Melody,
Yeah.
or
in
not the rhythm.
Yeah, but it only in a part of the melody. And it's not identical. I don't care about it. Anyways,
Do you-
let's say
do
it
your
was.
homework.
Unmistakably the same.
Okay, let's say it was stolen, but the bottom line is, it
Borrowed.
was adopted by as one of the
The Congress.
achievements of the Congress, adopting it as a national anthem,
It is beautiful.
as a Jewish national anthem. If there's a Jewish center in Palestine which represents world Jewry, it needs an anthem, and that was the anthem. And then the election of Hertzl as president of the Zionist organization. Now, on September 1st, 1897, immediately following the closing of the Congress, Hertzl wrote in his diary. So with that, I'm going to end. If I were to sum up the Basel Congress in a word, which I shall guard against pronouncing publicly, in other words, shh, it would be this. In Basel, I founded the Jewish state.
Wow.
So he did mention state here.
Nice.
If I said it out loud today, I would be greeted by universal laughter. In 5 years, perhaps. Certainly in 50 years, everyone will perceive it. Now, 50 years to the month later, on May 14th, 1948,
Wow.
David
That's
Ben Gurion announced the establishment of the state of Israel.
I like that.